All right, guys, my name is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton Sehan. We are here at True TV with a very, very special guest. George Lewis is here, and we're going to talk about a lot of fun things. Recently, he did my chart, and actually, he did it about a year ago as well. And there was just some extraordinary things that came up that I was able to kind of like make some decisions and see some things come around the corner. Same thing happened again, and he got on the topic of where we are as a planet and where we are as Americans. And it just like made me want him to have a little talk about it live so people can kind of see what's going on. But anyway, I think you're going to really enjoy this. And before we get started, don't forget to hit the like, don't forget to share, don't forget to comment. I would love to actually see where you guys are from. That's something that I haven't asked in a while, but just because of locations and geography, put in the comments here like where you're from, and kind of gauge who you are as an audience. But without further ado, George, how's it going?
Going really well. It's so nice to see you and to be doing this together today.
Yay, I'm excited. So you mentioned something about Pluto. You
Yeah.
mentioned something about, oh my gosh, there's so many different things. The age of Aquarius, um, all
Yeah.
kinds of things going on. And maybe, you did predict that Trump was going to make it, and you somehow saw that in the charts. And what we didn't know is if they would steal enough to take it away, like they did in 2016, which now we know a million Diddy-crats votes were completely vanished this time around. So that was interesting. But so apparently they didn't steal enough to make anything
Yeah.
happen.
I think the steal happened this time, but the overwhelming force of the people spoke. The mandate was so formidable this time. I mean, in 2016, it was big. And in 2020, you and I and your listeners will know that it was stolen. But at this level, you see, not only the population pushed through those glass ceilings, but also because the public was more aware of the theft, the deep state wasn't able to do it in the same way because you'd already got more boots on the ground of the people saying, well, doing it, and then getting into the voting stations early. So there were a lot of sort of there were these sort of thresholds that they had to get through, and I think probably this is my surmise in about 15, 20, maybe 30 days ago, the negative powers have switched to another plan, and they've switched probably to a post-election plan where they're going to at some point do something leading up to inauguration. I don't know what that is, but I think the white hats, if we want to call it that, the good guys, know the playbook. And we don't, but the astrology is where I get interested. The astrology, whether it's the United States national chart, the natal chart of the United States, or Mr. Trump's chart, is so potent compared to, say, Biden's chart, which was just ridiculous. And even Mrs. Clinton's chart, I mean, with all that hidden energy in Scorpio, I mean, yes, we could see some pretty dark behavior if we need to go into that, but it didn't have the potency of this particular man, Donald Trump. And then, of course, with Pluto going into, Pluto's at the anaretic degree of Capricorn, meaning it's right at the last stages. Pluto is transformation, it's death and resurrection. And then it's in Capricorn. Capricorn is institutions, the alphabet agencies, big business, corporations, big money, currency, the Federal Reserve. This is real mega stuff. We are seeing the collapse of the Federal Reserve. And the thing is, we, the people, are beginning to see it as Pluto moves through these late stages of Capricorn and then obviously into the Aquarius. And it really is the hallmark of the Aquarian age. And we do finally start to see, my gosh, our belief systems have been co-opted, have been coerced, have been propagandized. And we are going to learn over the next 20 years how not to define ourselves through our own belief systems.
Yeah, how much do you think this could involve even the uncovering or the disclosure of the whole Diddy situation and like this, celebrity people,
100%.
I mean, because this has been talked about for years. I mean, all of us, a lot of us have been saying this for years with entertainment and
Yeah.
politics and sports and all of these things that have been hijacked to use for control of a certain narrative. And we knew that these guys had some blackmail, had some things going on where they were kind of having to be puppets and do whatever everyone was told. And you could see even some of the people who backed Diddy, I mean, I'm sorry, Kamala, saying at the beginning Trump, and then had to like change it and then come forward and begrudgingly, you know, support her and endorse her, which if you watch body language or listen to backward speech or anything, you can see these people don't want to say what they're saying. They're completely like, oh God, do I have to do this? Like everything looked like they were being forced. And
Very much so.
so is Pluto type of like,
Yeah, I mean, Pluto is definitely secrets coming to the fore. 100%, you're right on that. But it's so interesting you mentioned like the P Diddy and the Kamala, because really what we're seeing is the visibility of all these actors are bought and paid for. And sadly, and this is where I do have compassion. And you and I, we work in the healing arts. Let's not forget that we're on the healing spiritual wing of this awakening. And politics has always been a big thing for me because we live in the 3D, but ultimately it's about the spirituality. And the spirituality has been co-opted and totally inverted for decades and decades. And, the Mephistophelan pact with the devil, to reach that height in Hollywood, you have to do some form of sacrifice and some form of satanic sacrifice. You have to give something up to get the money. And we're seeing the revelation now, whether it's P. Diddy and all the other actors around him. And this is part of that Pluto, the Plutonic, the revelation of secrets. I mean, for example, Nickelodeon, the connection with Nickelodeon and Epstein Island, it's the same thing. It's the same shape. Epstein Temple is the same as the Disney logo. It's exactly the same color. You see the cartoon Unwish Island. I mean, you see Pinocchio and he's smoking that phallic cigar and you realize there's this connection and with the dwarfs and, symbolism will be their downfall. We're now quoting the military intelligence at his Q. And back in England, of course, I remember as a kid, it was Captain Pugwash, Master Bates and Seaman Staines. I mean, there's so much hidden metaphor in all those children's programs. And we're coming to a place, a crossroads now. Are we, the people, are waking up for the first time to just how co-opted and sort of programmed and also misaligned we were. We weren't sovereign in understanding it. Our parents weren't. Their parents weren't. We just slowly moved into this almost Neptunian fog-like zombification. And of course, the vaccines and the jibbity jabs have helped that, as have the bullshit from the water and the bullshit from the food. We've been attacked as human beings, especially the Americans, in every single way. And now is the Great Awakening, and people are beginning to do that. We have, now we have Kennedy, one of the great names, if not the greatest name of the Democratic Party, standing up and saying, no, the Democratic Party is co-opted. I mean, if people don't understand that, that just shows how brainwashed they are. And he's running the health movement of the New Republic. This is a big deal. He's starting to talk not just about vaccines, but he's really talking about how the legality of the big pharma to be immune from prosecution is going to be revoked. That is a major deal. And you, of course, know all about that in the sense of that's going to unravel very fast. And we are going to get into the new earth when we're going to be talking 0 point energy, pretty soon. And that's when we get into our mutual friend, Laura Eisenhower's, cup of tea, because, we suddenly go properly galactic and it's no more woo woo. No, we're actually in for the ride. This is Elon Musk. Come and get me.
absolutely. Well, and yeah, you mentioned Trump's chart.
Yes.
I'd love you to expand on that. And then also, have you ever done Robert's chart?
I have, yes. I mean, I haven't got them to hand, but I know them pretty well. I mean, what's interesting with actually RFK Jr.'s chart, he's exactly a Saturn return younger than his late father. And they carry a very interesting Capricorn signature. But where you see, and I haven't got them to hand, but if I recall, with RFK, when he got assassinated, Dad, when he got assassinated, there was some definite activation of Mars and Saturn in his natal chart as well as with the transits. The wonderful RFK Jr. doesn't have that configuration, and yet RFK Jr. is continuing the life purpose. And actually, funny enough, and I said this to our friend Laura the other day, this is where I get very excited as as a Brit having moved to America, in this sense, I represent the American because, of course, I still sound like an Englishman because I speak the mother language, but I'm properly an American. And this is what it's about. We come here legally and we believe in this amazing experiment, which is going to this time round lead the world in a way. But the point is here with there's certain families, aren't there? The original Tesla and his relationship, friendship with John Trump. A lot more will be discovered on that. We don't know, but that's interesting. There's Dwight Eisenhower who warned us before. You've got obviously the original Kennedy. You've got these big people who come in their incarnation to bring in the light. And they could have been born in dark families, but they come and they do a turnaround. I mean, I think it's interesting, even some celebrities have done a switcheroo. It's a very exciting time as we begin to see who's really serving the light and who's serving the darkness, and it's a question of choice. Now, back to the astrology, what you see with Mr. Trump, President Trump, is he has a very potent chart. Firstly, he has Uranus, the planet of innovation and sudden events, and really sort of it's a form of eccentricity. The Uranian energy is the sky god. It's very potent. It's very original. It's all about the future. He has it conjunct the sun. So when he was born, his sun, his Gemini sun, is exactly conjunct Uranus. Furthermore, it's conjunct his north node, life purpose, what he's here to do in this life. And it's opposite a full moon, which means it's opposite a lunar eclipse. That's a very powerful archetype. Born during a lunar eclipse with the north node conjunct the sun and Uranus, already that's potent. Let me add one more thing to the menu, and this is what even more activates it. He has Mars on the ascendant
You're going to
in
have to
Leo.
explain this because I
Okay,
don't speak astrology, and maybe a lot of people here
okay.
say,
Well,
but what does it mean?
Mars on the ascendant he is a bulldozer, and that man has been attacked more than any other person in my life. I can't name anyone in the last 40 plus years who has remotely come close to what Mr. Trump has experienced. Mars on the ascendant he is in it because he's passionate. It's on the fixed star Regulus. Regulus is the fixed star of the lion. It's one of the four royal stars in astrology. That's a very potent indication that this man has a very powerful life mission. And there's more. So you definitely see that. And it ties very closely to the American natal chart of 1776, July 4th. And his chart constantly lights up that natal chart. So there's this bi-directionality. There's this relationship going on. And you see it in his amazing little talks on the sofa of New York City with, I forget the lady, in the 1980s, where this man just cares back then. You've seen it, I've seen it. You know, cares passionately about this country. And he says, oh no, he doesn't imagine he would be a politician because, why would he go into it? It's so corrupt. But he says one day someone might have to step in and really do what's needed. And lo and behold, this is what this man's done. And of course, the military asked him to because he's clean. Yes, he's hobnobbed with all the Democrat people. There are photographs of him shaking hands with millions of people. But he never went to Nickelodeon. He never went to Epstein Island. He banned Mr. Epstein from Mar-a-Lago back in the late 80s or 90s. I know that. I've been there. I know that for fact. And so, they've tried to put on all this smear on him, but it can't stick. His Teflon, because at the end of the day, not only has he not partook in that stuff, he's actually here on an agenda. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he knows his soul contract. And yes, I suppose, as we all do, we awaken to it as human beings as we progress through life. We're still human, we still have relationships, we fuck up, all that. But, there's a powerful sense of justice, truth, purpose, and real collective responsibility. And that's what motivates me, just as someone who works in the healing arts and an astrologer, to say, oh, I can get behind this because this is real and this is going to help the whole of humanity.
Absolutely. Well, what about Elon? Have you ever done any chart on him?
You know, um, I haven't got it to hand, and I'd be very happy to jump on with you another time. Um,
Yes.
I will say this is I think with him, it's going to be a little confusing, like it is, I'm going to be honest, with Biden, like it is going to be. Not so much with Mrs. Clinton because you could see the darkness. With the Biden, you see, we had four iterations. So we had the death of Mr. Biden. Of course, I don't have knowledge of the tribunals or whatever happened with the original Biden. I'm just here as a human being. But I'm a portrait painter. What does that mean? Is I can see very clearly when an eye is blue, when an eye is brown. I can see very clearly when an earlobe is that way and that way. I can see very clearly when someone writes with their left hand and right hand. Now, to me, that's comms, back to Q. But for most people, they don't get Q or whatever, they're brainwashed, fine. But, height
Well,
differentiation, I mean, come on. We were on the fourth clone or body double by the end. I mean, you and I know that.
I don't know that. I don't that I'm not a fan of that. And it's fine if you are. Like I'm cool with what people believe, but with scalar waves, it looked like he hasn't died. He may have had some sort of thing happen. But
Okay, well, then there's been some
and also
transformation.
with scalar waves, the Q thing was hijacked years ago. So maybe the stuff at the beginning was real and it showed that it was real, but then something's shifted. And
So
so
for
it's
me, it's
like,
just the symbols. It's just, see, for me, I'm very fascinated in symbology. And as you know, symbology means to bring together. Diabolism means to split asunder. So symbolic, diabolic. So for me, it's very easy as a symbologist, as an astrologist, working with many alchemically divine modalities. When I look at certain um, symbolic names or whatever, the way Q was reading certain there was a sentence here which suddenly I could delve into, like watch the water, like, certain things made me question and start to observe things and do my own homework. So for me, I think all it was to
definitely
open up.
definitely a catalyst for sure for people
Exactly.
to dig
That's
deep.
to me is all it is. It's a catalyst for you and I to be having this conversation now, and a ton of Americans and around the world, digital anons as they're called, getting on because men, on the whole, I mean, men and women love to investigate, and that geeky type of investigation suddenly got activated. So no longer playing Game Boy or Donkey Kong or whatever the games are. Oh, I'm actually going to do something useful for humanity has been engendered. I feel that's all.
Yeah. And for the record, I do believe that there is cloning going on, and I do believe that there are cloning stations and all this stuff is underground. Like that all is above par and does actually prove true. Whether he is a clone or not, whatever, we don't have to agree on that. But I'm
No,
just curious, like, so you think that Elon might be too, and that's why you can't do his chart, or
well, I will look at his chart, but I'd be very happy to do that with you another time. I think the Elon Musk of today, there's something very different about him from 5 or 10 years ago. And I feel that also about Mr. Putin. And I think part of the Pluto in Aquarius, so if I get back on track, is to be really open as a human species over the next 20 years to how far behind we have been on understanding technology. So
yeah.
we tend to think historically the most dangerous thing on this planet is a nuclear bomb. And of course, that is very dangerous. But I'm going to quote Elon Musk saying that actually the most dangerous thing on our planet is AI, especially when it's programmed algorithmically not to support the biological human, when it's programmed to support a death cult. It is depopulation and transhumanism. And I think part of the Great Awakening since 2016 has been this realization. And there are certain light forces coming into our galactic earthly world to create more balance between the dark and the light. This is, you see, way bigger than politics. We were out of balance until 2016. The darkness was way too dark and it was going very, very entropic. We're getting back to centropy, some form of balance between the entropy and the centropy.
Yeah, I agree. And some people are saying that he was hijacked. Some people are saying that he's going to go dark or what. I personally think that, and I'm not just on a science again level, is I've never in my practice ever met someone with autism that was evil yet. Maybe I will. So far, I haven't. Usually, the way they're wired, they're very pure hearted and like literally can't hurt things, or I mean they may have behaviors that are you know disruptive, or just out of things that they can't do, ticks or screaming, or not having an emotional outburst or not liking all the sensory things. But not like waking up in the morning going, how can I take over the earth and like murder a bunch of people and blah 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 blah. And not that kind of, you know what I mean? So
I just-
um he just come anything I've done with testing, and I've seen other people who different types of testing, he comes off very pure, and actually 450 on the scalar waves, which is 500 is love. Like there's hardly anyone over 200 like in the planet that even make it ever to 200, which is that awakening time. And for him to be 450 and Robert Kennedy to be 900, born 900, and then had this hero's journey. A lot of people have a lot of trauma at birth and will get in the lower hundreds or less, and then they have a hero's journey trying to climb out of it. A lot of people never climb out of it. He went up to he stayed kind of whatever, and then even was in heroin for 14 years, super low, but somehow climbed his way to 900 when Jesus is 1,000. I mean, the master Jesus is 1,000. My God, like this is and even Trump and Putin are 450. So does someone take them out and put in a clone? Maybe. Does somebody, I just don't see, who knows? I
Well,
mean,
yeah. I mean, I don't know so much about whether Elon Musk, whether it was cloned. I haven't actually suggested that. For me, it's very clear about Biden that as someone who has a acute visibility and intuition, the Biden we've seen has been a number of different iterations. I'm just going to leave it at that. And to me, that's very obvious. The eyes are the gateway to the soul, and watching it, it's just so different. And the shape, the facial structure of Biden from 1970 to 2018, 19 is
just shape.
totally,
I thought it
totally.
was cosmetic surgery because the
Well,
guy,
whatever. But this is the thing is again part of what I'm trying to get people to be. This is the Aquarian age.
yeah,
We have got so conditioned to define ourselves by our belief system. And what I have really enjoyed in my little journey here is I don't define myself any longer by my belief system.
I
I
know.
don't have a fixed view. So, for example, if you give me evidence that, oh, yes, that is the same Biden and it's cosmetic surgery, I'm going to run with that.
Sure.
I will take that and I will adapt that and bring that in to my explanation and then share it. And then I'll be getting something from Tom, Dick, Harry, and I'm constantly in synthesis. And I find my beauty that way.
I love that. And I'm the kind of person who is like, well, this is what I believe right now, but that could change in 5 minutes. So, because I'm open too. I'm like, I love gathering lots of different pieces of resources and looking at things and then like coming up with whatever I agree. Because believe you me, I am definitely not the same person I was even like a year ago, let alone now. I mean, it's constantly changing, which I think that is an awesome quality in a person to be able to say that they were wrong when they were
Right.
wrong
Right.
and just go with the next thing and just say like, yep, I was messed up about that.
So,
And some people
so
won't.
Right. So to bring that back to Elon Musk, I can look you in the eye and to your listeners and say, I have no idea whether it's an Elon Musk Mark II, but there has been a shift in consciousness.
For sure.
That's the thing. And that's for me all I care about. So as a man of faith, I look at what Trump has built is a dream team. I mean, for me, the combination of him and RFK Jr. constantly gives me goosebumps because they're in one fell swoop is a unification beyond party politics. So the ones who don't get that are sadly still got the mind virus, to quote Musk. And that's obviously what we're really dealing with. And I had the mind virus at some point 10 years ago. I was at a posh school in England, totally brainwashed on things like royal family for a long time. Less about the individuals of the royal family. That doesn't concern me. It's institutional. You know,
Yes.
the United States was predicated on a rejection of European aristocracy. And it was all about we the people and that individualism in order to manifest what he or she wants, manifest destiny in the true sense of the individual, to grow the crops on his own or her own, to worship in her way. And we have to return to that. In 1871, and the history of the cabal and the takeover through the banking system, Federal Reserve, the sinking of the Titanic, many of your listeners will know all that. And it's just like, there is going to be this big, revelation coming through a re-understanding of history and his story.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think too with Elon, part of his awakening, he had his mom was abused on the street
Yeah.
and nobody did anything about it by the immigration situation. illegal immigration, by the way. I'm all very pro immigrants coming. My grandparents came over from Norway and Denmark, so I'm totally about it. And obviously you have. So nothing
Yeah.
against immigration, just illegal. And then the other thing is he's had his son, program. He says he's lost his son to some of this, what Judge Brown would call rainbow cult of, this just whole thing, which I don't care what anyone wants to do with their private behind the doors situation, but I don't agree with the grooming of all the confusion and all the surgeries and pushing all of this stuff before a certain age where their brain isn't completely even. Because I mean, I was a tomboy. I was literally such a tomboy, and I know Laura has mentioned she was at the retreat talking about how she used to call herself Chris, and she even went to a boys like retreat thing, and she called herself Chris and cut her hair and whatever, whatever. And then they came in and they were like, her mom was like, Laura, Laura. And then she was like, I'm not Laura, I'm Chris. And all the boys thought she was a boy. And then she was like, okay, I'm Laura. And it's like, what if she had done something about that then? What if her parents had done something about that then? She knows, like, we just go through this ebb and flow of figuring shit out,
But
like when we're
I
young.
also we do, and that's absolutely correct. The adolescent period, the pubescent period, is meant to be an area to tease out and to explore, but not to biologically, invert and corrupt. I also feel we come. You see, when you bring the spirituality back into the collective, the psyche, when you understand that we come here to have a human experience in one particular incarnation, we kind of make peace with the fact that in this time round, I'm tall, I've got blonde hair or whatever, I'm Northern European, I grew up in England, whether I wanted that or not. And you, with your own story, and as a male or as a female, and as a result, we can journey through it. And that's where there's that sensitivity and loving kindness, which, of course, in the collective psyche has been deliberately obscured through a fake philosophy of materialism, which is a better way to control people, you see. You see, when you take spirit and nature away, human beings can be much more manipulated. And that's also part of our realization. So it is back to nature. It is back to community. It's back to love. And not in a woo-woo sense. It's once we understand how we were hijacked. And I love history. So for me, I like to go back to history as a serious amateur historian. And I don't
Yes.
use the word professional because, again, that gives me freedom. As a serious amateur historian, I am fascinated with dates, times, and what really happened. And to learn from you, to learn from Harry, to learn from Sheila. Oh my gosh, Tartaria. Oh my gosh, the World Fairs. Oh, really? And so, the pyramids is a classic example. No, the pyramids were built by a previous civilization, and very soon we would be incredulous that anyone on our planet wouldn't think that. But up until this point, the brainwash has been so profound that the people who go against that, obviously thinking like fingerprints of the gods, Graham Hancock, has been in the wilderness for years, but now fortunately he's becoming mainstream. But it's taken a while.
Yeah, and I've just recently started watching a lot of Judge Brown.
Yeah.
And again, he mentioned that when there's confusion like that, they're easily manipulated, or people can be easily manipulated. And talk about American history. There's a couple 2 hours of him, like with Candace Owens, when he was literally there when MLK was I don't know if I could say words certain I'm
Mm.
scared to say certain things, but and RFK, he lived that. He was front row seats and a lot of the things that happened in California with Willie Brown and Skamala and all them. And so he talk about history. I learned so much actual history about even Charles Manson and that whole psyop of, trying, everyone wanted to go to war. So they needed everyone to go to war because they were making money, and also protecting drugs in Vietnam. So they're sending these guys over and they didn't want the guys didn't want to do it anymore. And, the hippie movement came. And so they sent this whole psyop thing for Manson to do what he did. He was a Fed and they did what they did. So everyone would have this mind F where they're like, oh God, I'm scared of hippies and hippies are bad. And then therefore people wanted to go follow the draft again and do all the things that they needed them to do. So, I mean, talk about history lesson and even me being schooled on like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. Just I encourage anybody to go listen to this guy because I just knew of him as the dude who did like these weird court cases, civil things where they were dumb, someone didn't pay a bill or something, which is not saying it's not important, but he's got an IQ of like way up there. I mean, this guy is really giving receipts too. He's not just anyway, but you mentioned something about maybe some unrest between now and 20 or 25 and before the inauguration. What is it that you're seeing? And
Well, astrologically, so I mean, I always want to work through the lens of astrology because for me, this great awakening is happening and it's going to unravel in the most beautiful way. I don't want to go too biblical by saying 1,000 years of peace because I don't even want to quantify like 1,000. I see our planet going in a trajectory that is outside a collective memory of our entire planet. I mean, genuinely, there is no collective memory left of freedom from a previous era. There isn't actually in any civilization, even in Bhutan, which is the closest to Tibet, which I've been to off and on. I spent 2 or 3 years there off and on. Close, but no. We have a great possibility of really, really ascending in consciousness where our lifespans will not only double, they're more likely to triple or quadruple and more. And I
wow.
know that to be true. I know from the technology, the people I'm speaking with, and what's coming down the pipeline. I mean, some of the new technologies I've got. I've just invested in the Lucy Light in my healing temple to put patients under when I do sound therapy, and it allows you to activate the pineal gland and go into a meditation without using drugs or plant medicine. I mean, I think plant medicine can be efficacious when it's done correctly, but there's so many new systems coming in which can really support our biological development. So, I think what when I look at the Pluto-Mars opposition that is going to play out due to the retrograde cycle off and on for the next 3 or 4 months, there are going to be certain delays. So, what I see is success. Yes, the mandate is clear. The people have spoken of this country, and basically the people are cheering the United States on even abroad, even if it may appear not, and obviously places like Britain and parts of Europe, unfortunately, are still very, very brainwashed, but it's happening. And so all I see is, you see, the dark side, most of them are not going to go down without a fight because they know if they do surrender, it's game over for them. So I'm just also very practical on that. So there is going to be, certain delays, but I also think this has been the greatest success story in the history of our planet, and I think it will be written about and talked about for hundreds and hundreds of years. I am very, very faithful about that, and I'm very, very also optimistic, but I don't necessarily see a full-on inauguration at the end of January, and I tell you why because I think we are still conditioned to think of it in these time linear fashions. I mean, I do know that the early republic, the inauguration was in springtime, close to the venal, the spring equinox. I also do know if you go up to 1871, the 19th president, after just before the corporation was turned, the United States was turned into a corporation. So there's a lot of other stuff going on behind the scenes, which is quite factual, quite meaty, and there are other anons doing great work on that. But I think in some ways we're moving the right way, but it's not all plain sailing, and we're not out of the woods yet. We can't be until tribunals come out more into the public so they can really see just what really has happened. And for example, even for you, you just self-censor yourself, understandably, as everyone does, because you want this to go out to as many people as possible. Very soon, we won't have to do that at all.
That would be amazing.
And exactly, and we can breathe, and that's where the trauma can be released. We have taken on a collective trauma. Yes, we have an individual trauma, but we have taken on so much because human beings are innately empathic, innately kind, and innately loving. And it's been deliberately inverted to keep us in fear, as Laura would say, back in the Saturnian inverted matrix. And Ike says that, of course, too, in his own way. And I think that's going to be released very soon.
Yeah, well, I just came back from Europe and we were in France, we were in England, we were in Scotland. And one of the things we noticed at all the places that we stayed is there's zero TV that has anything except for CNN and the BBC. So we know that that's the narrative, and that there's not even like a balance so people can like look at options besides
Well,
that. So that's
mm,
part of the brainwashing, but then also even people literally when they found out we were American, they were they were asking us like, well, what do you think about Trump? And of course I was going to say exactly what I think because I think he's pretty amazing and tell them all the reasons why. And then they were like, what, but what about this and this and this? And I was like, you guys don't have the television showing the other stuff. Like I literally went, to Trump Tower with Laura, and we went to the Nevada Trump Tower, went to Washington, D.C. We went to his hotel there. I've interviewed tons of people that work for him, and they would literally cry when I've said, like, what do you think about this man? And they had been with him 20, 30 years, and they were telling me they know he knows my name. He asks about my kids. He's done this for me. He's done that for me. He's paid off my mortgage. He's paid for this when he knew I was trouble. He paid my hospital bills off. Like every single person, I didn't speak to a single person from the cleaning person to the waitress to whoever working the store that he has in Trump Tower that didn't almost come to tears and say like he's like a dad to me. And like, 20, 30 years, you don't stay at a job unless really. And I told them that. And I was like, well, this is what you're not seeing. You're not seeing the good stuff. You're not seeing his thing with the military, and they would call out all this stuff. And I was like, that's just not even true. So it sucks about the censorship for sure. And to have a whole continent, whole area of the country, I mean, of the world that is only seeing one side is pretty crappy. So that's why like Joe Rogan and all these other people that are coming out, I'm like, thank you God that there's other forms of media that are actually,
yeah. No, I have I mean, obviously, as a Brit, I'm a dual citizen. I have a lot of sympathy, deep compassion for my British compatriots. But it is also time for them to start asking questions because, part of it is the compassion because of the brainwash through the BBC and the system. But then the other thing is the individuals stepping into their suzerainty, to their independence. And, Britain at one point was a cocky, thrusting, offshoot island of continental Europe. And it's become, over many hundreds of years, a very Saturnian, stark. If you look at the way, may I possibly do this? It's almost like it's so deferential, the British. And that's something I've always loved about the American spirit. I can do this. It's aspirational. It's the difference between EastEnders and Dynasty or Dallas or something. I mean, of course, there are some shocking archetypes in the old Dallas and Dynasty, but it's aspirational. Where with EastEnders and the old English ones, it's the glass is really half empty. I mean, actually, it's not full at all, and there's nothing in it.
well, I love the Brits. I
Of course.
went to University of London. One thing I appreciate about the culture is they're very direct and honest. Like you don't ever have to wonder like, well, what did he mean by that? Or what does she mean by like I love that's how I grew up. Maybe that's a northern thing, um, or a British thing, wherever it is. I'd rather know directly what someone's saying than try to have to like decode it later. And then really it's like the
Yeah,
opposite of what they
yeah,
really said. And just, but so I have a love for Europe very much so with my grandparents coming from there and living in Germany and living in England and you know I root for them and root for all of us to really see um where this goes and to awaken fully and to have a better experience in general, whether it's economy or censorship or health, like you said, or all the other things in general. But I know you have to go, and I am so thankful and just honored that you got to hang out for this little bit of
yeah.
time with us. And I hope that you'll come back sometime and we can
I'd love that.
on another.
I could share Elon Musk's chart and other people's charts. I
I
mean,
would love for you to do his chart. Let's do a whole thing on a couple people's charts.
yeah, I
Awesome.
mean, it's great. I mean, I did P. Diddy's the other day on David Icke's channel, Iconic, which was quite fun.
Let's do both of them. Let's do both. We'll get a date.
Okay.
Do a
Okay.
couple. That'd be awesome. Thank you so. Where can people find you? Where can people get your charts? I know you have
Yeah.
art. You have your room. Like
Yeah.
tell
I mean,
people.
there are two ways. I mean, at the moment, I probably need to bring them together. I've got my academy, which is the georgehlewisacademy.com, where I teach, all the esoteric arts, astrology, alchemy, tarot, all sorts of things like that. And then I have my website, georgehlewisacademy.com, where it's my art and my if you want to contact me for
Beautiful art. Oh my God.
sound therapy or astrology readings, you know.
Gorgeous art. This
Thank you.
guy, oh my God, it's breathtaking. I can't so clear, but it's so
This is one of mine behind. I painted it. It's called the Age of Aquarius. So it's like Hebe, the archetype, the female archetype of Hebe, the water bearer, and she's ushering in the new era of
beautiful.
uh,
Love it.
of, of the Age of Aquarius, which is a water bearing sign, but it's air, so it's got a watery air feel to it.
Love that. I love that. Well, I hope you guys will get in touch with him and connect with him, and you're going to see more of us. And actually, we may be doing some live in-person conferences here in the South, Florida, Louisiana, maybe even Montana. So be on the lookout for that, and we're going to get more details as we figure out what we're doing. But we know we're doing something with Laura and some type of tour, or who knows how it ends up looking. But love you guys. You can find me at drsharnael.com. Please go like, share, do all the things for the algorithm. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thank you so much. Bye.